Hello and welcome to another video. In this video we're playing some high alacrity lethality operative, running viral elements locked and loaded and the 10% crit tactical, or not tactical but implant. Synux shots is also a tactical that's not too bad, especially with high alacrity. You're able to take the 20% crit on your dots, which definitely helps with the crit loss from high alacrity, and then you also have the corrosive assault talent that will further increase your corrosive assault crit hit chance and crit hit damage, I believe. So it really doesn't suffer too bad. And then having the increased tick rate of your hots and your dots at the same time is just a benefit, pretty much for all dot specs, and especially healers that have like heals over time. This also lowers your global cooldown to 1.3. That's the whole point of playing high alacrity, but also at the same time it lowers your cooldowns as well. And with stim boost we actually get a whole bunch of extra alacrity, meaning that we can get down to, I think it's like 1.1 GCD, which is really nice during stim boost windows. And we also get reduced cooldown while we have stim boost up at the same time, so you're able to get even more value out of that. So for example, if I stim boost into Toxic Haze, instead of it being a 10 or 11 second cooldown, it'll be like a 9 or 10. If that makes sense. If you guys are curious about anything to do with lethality operative or just in general, I do have two different guides on the class. I have one called Crash Course, where I pretty much go over everything I know about the class. There are some slight changes, like for example, they bug fixed the viral elements after I actually fully explained how it worked and what you could fully do with that. It's nice to see that it got nerfed because it was just going to be meta again. We were going to go from last expansion to this expansion where it's just AP lethality. That's the best meta comp. And that would have been really boring to deal with that just again. Now you actually see things like engineering and double AP. That's pretty much the comps that you'll see, but engineering just naturally counters melee in general. So when you have triple melee, GG, sniper is just so much better. But yeah, seeing lethality get knocked down a little bit is nice, and also requires a little bit more brain power to play lethality now, and that's a definite W because that means there's less people that are just rerolling to it to do big numbers, as a lot of its numbers now are more traditional gameplay, so you had to have known how to play lethality prior to still do like really good lethal damage. Anyway, getting into it, the healing ability on the spec is not nerfed. It's actually even better than it's ever been. Losing the extra duration on stim boost does hurt its HPS, but that's not really a big deal. Overall, your ability to heal people is really crazy. There's multiple games that I posted of Arena gameplay where I'm doing over 10k HPS. As a DPS, you know, that's it's pretty high for a DPS just in general. That isn't just healing itself. Now, outside of that, with high alacrity, there are some changes that you would want to do. Toxic Blast with viral elements does get spreaded. Or spread, not spreaded. It's some weird choices, I swear, man. Every now and then, I swear, I make some really weird choices. But either way, with Toxic Blast, that being a dot that you can spread with viral elements on Toxic Haze, you want to prioritize not missing that. It's also your vital part of your core single target rotation. So if you're going to do corrosive assault on somebody, you want to have Toxic Blast on somebody, and if somebody dies Toxic Blast on them, it will reset for you, so you're able to reapply it. So that's one thing that you want to prioritize, and as a high alacrity user, you don't really have that much points to work with to afford alacrity, so just getting a stun off before you actually use that, it helps a lot. But overall, kind of take what you can get. One way to think about it too is, like, especially in Voidstar, there's a reason why I fight in the places I do, is if I can lure them into like a trap, I can easily get my spread off instead of trying to W key against a whole bunch of range. That's probably the worst move that I could possibly do. I want to make it annoying for them so they don't just tunnel me the whole game, because they already want to tunnel me and they already know that they need to kill me, so I might as well make it annoying and try to create some benefit for myself by forcing them to come closer. This is another thing to think about too. If you're running the heal Toxic Haze as well, let's say you're not playing high alacrity for some reason, which, you know, it'd be completely reasonable not to. You can abuse the Toxic Haze heal with your probes and your Brawl heal. You can kind of just place it down around the corner. Somebody walks up to you, you get a free Toxic Haze on them, or I guess Lethal Strike AoE on them, or not respecting your Toxic Haze, which is fine. And if they don't, that's okay, because you're still getting the heal from Toxic Haze. Toxic Haze is actually a lot of damage, so even if you're not using fire elements, even on smoke shots, it's a really good tool. Even the heal on Toxic Haze when you're running smoke shots is not a bad idea, because you're able to use it a little bit more situational and like put it on the door permanently to give extra HPS and DPS if people are standing in it. You can kind of treat it like a zone control. But other than that, there's not really anything tricky about lethality. Sure, it does take a little bit more ability to play and a little bit better APM. But overall, it's really just dot, and then if you're going to do single target, you use Toxic Blast into Corrosive Assault, and you use your Lethal Strike pretty much on cooldown if you can, and Toxic Haze into Lethal Strike in any situation that you have cleave. Typically, I will sit on my Lethal Strike quite often, and it's really just because I don't always want to be in melee range, but I also don't want to miss a spread. Sometimes you just end up sitting on it for too long. You can definitely do a lot more damage if you don't sit on things. It's better to use it and then get it back, because especially on high alacrity, you're going to have it back quite often, quite fast. The only times that it'll be a little bit different is where you want to prioritize proper GCD usage, is when you're going to die and you don't have much time. And then for those that are still getting used to the defensive rotation and whatnot, Absorb is something that you should always be using. It's like your lowest cooldown defensive, and also gives you 15% damage reduction for 6 seconds after it collapses, so you can pre-pop it. It's a damage reduction ability, so you want to pop it early. And yes, I did roll to my death intentionally there. I didn't want to get stuck by the PT tank there. I really just wanted to go to the next area, and how I was hoping the door would be almost open, and I got lucky there. I know the match is about to end, or I guess flip, so I just wanted to take the chance there instead of just sit there and fight the tank after I dotted him and then rolled off. That was strategic. That wasn't me accidentally doing that. I know it might seem kind of odd to do, but if you've watched any of my streams, you've seen me do it many times to catch up with the team when I am relatively far behind. There's definitely a lot of power, especially as a objective player, to hold people behind, especially an enemy team when they're attacking. If you can hold them behind, like if you have any point, you have 2 or 3 people stuck behind with you. It's just one of you. It's a worthy trade if your team is sufficient without you. Especially if you can dot them and just like reset. That would be obviously just so much better, because you're immediately going to be with your team again, and then they're going to be slowed. And it'd be RP walking to your team, which is just going to be a benefit for you. But overall, it's not really something anybody has to think about or ever worry about, because it really doesn't come down to the wire anymore. Players aren't really focusing on objectives anymore, and even if you do focus on objectives, you're arguably playing against nobody, which is not too fun. There's not really a way for them to tackle objectives overall unless they change the way the maps are played, which I think is a great ideal. I have ideals for pretty much every single map, and it was a video I was thinking about, like dedicating 20 or 30 minutes just talking about it for every single map, how they can rework them to make them a little bit more combat oriented, and anybody that wanted to TDM or number farm, they would have to play objective and vice versa. Like, you couldn't play the game without going for the objective, if that makes sense. And they can easily do that by giving buffs to the objective. So for example, if you're in the end zone, instead of having leap immunity, maybe you should have like a defense gain, like where you get 5% damage reduction while you're in your end zone. Stuff like that, or just passive healing. There's a lot of things that they could do that are really simple that would give buffs around the map, that would give incentives to fight in certain areas, but also give incentive to fight for certain things. For example, there's a lot of penalties for having the hub ball, but there's not a lot of benefits to telling a mitigation tank that has the hub ball other than trying to kill it to get the ball. There's definitely things that they could change for the ball. They could have increased damage taken if they pick the ball by like 5% or something like that, so then everybody has to tunnel the ball carrier if they want to get optimal damage, because 5% is going to make a difference. Especially if you're AoE spec, you're going to cleave off the ball carrier. There's a lot of stuff like that they can do that will just change the way things work, and I do think some of the penalties of having the ball are a little bit too detrimental at the current state. But that's definitely for a different video. If you guys have any questions about high alacrity, much less lethality operative, feel free to leave them in the comments. I'll be more than happy to get back to you. Other than that, I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day.